Are your Girl Scout cookies toxic? Like, seriously toxic? Well, there is a company, or should I say a nonprofit group called Moms Across America that wants you to believe that Girl Scout cookies are toxic. Now, why in the world would a nonprofit want to go, ruin the Girl Scout cookie season? Seriously, why would they do that? Well, let's take a little rewind. Okay. So, Moms Across America, they have a Facebook page that is almost infamous for posting different quote unquote science and research about different foods in our food supply.
Right.
And I personally think this is straight out food fear mongering. Okay. But they claim to be trying to inform people about toxins in everyday food. So you may have never heard of this, except for good old Joe Rogan mentioned on his podcast on Monday that Girl Scout cookies were toxic as bad word. Okay. And since then, everybody's up in arms. So let's kind of break this down. Okay. So the Moms Across America, about 2 weeks ago, they posted a a Facebook post that basically stated, and I'm going to read this to you because this is how they wrote it. This is not taken out of context. This is how they wrote it. Okay. 100% of the Girl Scout cookies tested contained toxic metals and glyphosate. 22 out of the 25 samples were positive for all five toxic metals: aluminum, arsenic, cadmium, lead, and mercury. That the peanut butter patties had the highest levels of toxic metals, Thin Mints had the highest levels of glyphosate, and 76% of the cookies tested positive for levels of cadmium that exceeded EPA limits in water. Now, if that last one sounds weird, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Okay. So let's talk about that last one where they said that it exceeded the limits of cadmium in water. Well, right there, you should already kind of question these results because they are comparing levels found in cookies with what is acceptable in water.
Right.
Okay. So right there, that tells you something's wrong because they have very different levels.
Yeah.
But so we actually went to their website. Their last claim actually was 24 out of 25 samples of Girl Scout cookies tested positive for lead. Okay. And that sounds scary as all get out.
Yeah.
As a mom, as somebody who likes Girl Scout cookies, I can't afford them, but I like them. That's a little scary. Like, wait a minute, my Girl Scout cookies are going to contain lead?
Yeah.
Well, we took a little bit of a deep dive here. So basically, the peanut butter patties were the most contaminated, according to their report,
Yeah.
and that they contained the highest levels of lead, and it contained 42.5 parts per billion of lead. Well, what exactly does parts per billion mean? Well, to put this in, I think this is just a great analogy. Okay. Parts per billion is the smallest unit of measure. It is used to measure dilutions in chemistry. So, how small is this? It is the equivalent of 1 grain of sugar in a billion grains of salt. That would be 1 parts per billion. Okay. That's pretty insane. Now, we looked up all kinds of levels of what parts per billion of lead is acceptable. And to give you an idea, so they're claiming that their tests showed 42.5 parts per billion of lead in cookies. Okay.
Right.
Raisins have a maximum lead available of 151 parts per billion. Okay. And lead is naturally occurring in fruits, vegetables, anything grown in the soil.
Yeah.
Um, Grape juice has a maximum of 41 parts per billion. Peanut butter, 45 parts per billion. Quinoa, 98 parts per billion. And you're like, but that still sounds like a lot. What did you find, Crystal, when you looked about the lead that was in cookies?
So I was looking into one of the things I found was on the glyphosate, or the rather than the lead. But a lot of what I found based on the EPA and the FDA was that while like the preference is little to none, like this is still well within a reasonable level. Like it's insane to think that something and it has peanut butter in it, and peanut butter naturally has like 45 grams, so it's lower than the actual peanuts all by themselves, which
Yeah.
is kind of silly.
And they, Girl Scouts of America actually had to put out like a press release stating that um, that these environmental contaminants, which can include heavy metals, they
Right.
naturally occur in soil. That means that nearly all food using plant-based ingredients, including organic foods, may contain trace amounts. This does not mean that these foods are harmful to consume. And says the Girl Scouts also said that glyphosate is found nearly everywhere in the food chain. It's not just cookies, it's literally everything on the shelf. And so it said similarly, small amounts of heavy metals can be found naturally in the environment, including in food products due to air, water, soil exposure. These metals are not added to our cookies, and the Girl Scouts noted that its bakers confirmed that the levels reported do not pose a food safety concern to our customers.
Right.
So this comes down to, I don't know if you've heard the phrase, the poison is in the dose. Okay. So, yes, lead is poisonous, but you would have to consume so much in order for it to become poisonous. And there
So
was, go
go
ahead.
ahead. Well, I was going to say the thing that I found when we were talking about dosing, and this was a really good example of the glyphosate. It's an herbicide, right?
Mhm.
So I'm not a fan of it. It's not on my top tier ingredients. It's a one that
You're
I
not
avoid.
buying bottles of glyphosate and seasoning your food with it.
God no. Okay, so I found a really good way of describing how much it would take to basically poison a child with glyphosate. And so there was, let's see, the highest levels found were in Thin Mints, and Thin Mints had 111 parts per billion, or 111 micrograms per kilogram of cookies. Okay. And each cookie is 11 grams. So not even a kilogram. It's like, what is it, 0.011
Kilogram.
kilograms.
Yeah.
So a little bit. So one little cookie, right? So that means that each cookie contains 1.2 micrograms. 1.2 micrograms. The entire 1.2 micrograms is so small that a 66-pound child would have to eat 9,000 cookies in one day to
Okay.
exceed the
So,
daily limit.
my son is like 58 pounds. So he's
Right.
pretty close to this. Okay.
Yep.
So let's put this 9,000 cookies in a single day in perspective. Okay. So 9,000 cookies would be approximately 529 boxes of Girl Scout cookies, which don't even have to get into that. That's going to cost you $3,200 for one
just
day's worth of cookies.
just to
Okay.
slowly poison your kid.
But, okay. So you would, a child for 24 hours straight would have to eat 22 boxes per hour. Okay. That comes down to a child would have to eat 5.6 cookies per minute for every minute in a 24-hour span, which is 1,440 minutes per day. Okay. Now when you hear their numbers in context, you're like, this is not as big of a deal as that they're claiming to be. But because of the fact that they're using words like toxic, 76%, 23 out of 25 cookies had toxic metals or
Right.
glyphosate in them. Now, if you're like, this kind of sounds repetitive, as far as I think I've heard a story about this. Moms Across America was also responsible for the great Cheerio Gate about glyphosate. Okay. Claiming that if you feed your children Cheerios, you are killing them. When it
Right.
came to find out, you would have to feed your child 2,100 cups of Cheerios in a single day to get to the dose that could be harmful. Okay.
It's a lot of
So, in
Cheerios.
reality, if you were feeding your child 2,100 cups of Cheerios per day for multiple days, then they might get glyphosate poisoning. But 1 or 2 cups is not going to cause glyphosate poisoning.
I was just looking. I was like, okay, how many servings are in a box? It's a 12
Right? I
ounce.
mean, like,
Yeah.
seriously.
Like
And so I,
that's a lot of Cheerios. Who's got that kind of Cheerio money?
right, who's got
Nobody
that
has.
kind of Girl Scout money, you know? But I think here's where it all comes down. Okay.
Mm.
So, regardless of the fact that they're throwing out numbers that are not in context, okay, they're just throwing it out there like each cookie is slowly killing your kids. But to make
Or
it
you.
worse, here is what Moms Across America is telling the Girl Scouts they need to do. This is their agenda. Okay. They want the Girl Scouts to inform all of their suppliers that they can only source wheat and ingredients that are not sprayed with glyphosate at all, meaning that basically they have to use organic wheat. Okay. Well, that's going to drive up the cost.
Yeah.
That they should also be only sourcing non GMO products. Price go up. Next, they want their suppliers to conduct batch testing for pesticides, herbicides, similar to glyphosate, and heavy metals. Well, their suppliers probably should be doing testing, so we're not going to count that one as a bad one. But then they also want them to remove seed oils, and they want to substitute it with coconut oil, organic butter, or organic unscented tallow. So
Yeah.
this is right in line with a lot of fear mongering you see about seed oils and about how they're killing people. But once again, it's the poison is in the dose. And then here's the kicker that really gets me. Okay. They want the Girl Scouts to start a program to support Girl Scouts to be champions of regenerative organic farming practices. Okay. What does regenerative organic farming practices have to do with the Girl Scouts mission?
That's a fantastic question. Like, and it's not like the
No,
entire point is to be. Oh, the words just left my whole brain. Like you're. It's about being. Oh
it's
my
about
god.
empowering women,
Thank
empowering
you.
girls, encouraging leadership. And if you want to grow up to be a fear mongering food basher to the rest of us, then yes, that is exactly what Moms Across America is pushing the Girl Scouts to be. But that's not what Girl Scouts is. Because, first off, Girl Scouts is not about cookies. Cookies are a fundraiser for Girl Scouts to be able to learn skills and to basically grow as girls and leaders and women.
Yeah.
Okay. And so,
Entrepreneurial skills as well as, it teaches you to talk to people. It teaches you to be involved in your community and, to really think on your feet too. So it's problem solving. It's so many skills that you may not have had exposure to otherwise.
and so maybe somebody needs to tell moms across America to back the hell off.
Yeah.
Okay? Because I feel like part of what they do is scare the hell out of people. And who are they targeting? Moms. We already have enough mom guilt.
My God,
We
yes.
already get enough just guilt of, did we feed our kids enough fruits and vegetables? Are we keeping them happy and healthy and warm? Are they not going to need therapy later on because I lost my cool? But now I have to worry that I'm killing them with Girl Scout cookies. Well, but Moms Across America didn't tell me that I would have to feed my kid 9,000 freaking Thin Mints to poison them.
Yeah.
So
The
to
way they've,
me,
yeah.
I don't care what Moms Across America's agenda here is, but they need to stop because they are putting out bad information. They are literally playing into people's greatest fears. And then who's getting hurt here? Girl Scouts. Okay?
It's intentionally misleading. And that's
It's
the part that
it's
bothers me the
beyond
most.
misleading. And I don't know how many people out there are not going to buy Girl Scout cookies because of Moms Across America, then Joe Rogan mentioning it on his podcast. Now, it's funny that as a follow up later on, Moms Across America came out and said, if you want to support the Girl Scouts, just donate cash, which is fine if you don't like Girl Scout cookies or you don't want to eat them or whatever. Absolutely. Hand a Girl Scout, some money and make a donation.
Yeah.
But to publicly humiliate Girl Scouts with false claims about their cookies during their fundraising season, I almost feel like this is why aren't they getting sued for slander or defamation?
That's the part. That's the tricky part because technically what they've said is accurate. Technically speaking, it's out of
They just
context.
left
It's
out like the important parts.
right. There's key aspects that definitely are required to fully understand the data that they've presented. But they're preying on your fears. They know that, people are concerned about what's in their food. And so and because this is a splurge, it is something extra. It's not something you have to buy. Like, hello. Um, this is my cat. Um, it's intentional. It's very intentional. The timing of it definitely is intentional. I don't even know when the research was done or if it's been done on the most recent batch or the last batch and they held it in their pocket until now because it
Well,
would be the most impactful. But I'm going to buy an extra box just because I'm picky.
right? Well, and it's interesting too because USA Today put out an article about this.
Mhm.
And they even mentioned that this was a flawed study because it wasn't peer reviewed.
Yeah.
And Moms Across America are like, just because we didn't get our peers to look at it doesn't mean it's flawed. But there's a reason why studies are peer reviewed.
Yeah.
They catch errors, they catch misinformation, but the fact that they skipped that step and
Yeah.
just went straight out to, get this out there,
Well,
and
it removes biases as
it
well.
does. Because this, people complain all the time about food studies that are done by food manufacturers. When you're paying the money for the test, you almost get to control the results.
Yeah.
So then Moms Across America, being the one that's paying for the testing, they then are going to take that information and use it to their advantage. This is
Yeah.
not an unbiased third party, has no skin in the game. So, and I will say that they published their findings back in December, but they've kind of refueled it with, right about the time that Girl Scout cookies started going on for sale. And because
Right.
it was December 30th, I'm guessing this was actually last year's cookies, but nowhere are they saying last year's cookies had da 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 da. So
Right.
I feel like if you're going to put out this information and only tell 20% of the story, it makes people assume the rest.
Yeah.
And how many times have you seen somebody get upset about like a clickbaity title and they never actually read the article? Well, this is exactly the same thing. They're throwing out just enough clickbaity information and people are running with it, assuming that it's in 100% context, and it's
Right.
not. And I guarantee you, nobody went to their website and read this ginormous study that they put and actually said, hey, I wonder if those parts per billion are even, legal, is or what they doing is wrong, because then they would have to go do their own research because they're not providing that information on their blog post.
Right.
So, you know, I'm not a big fan of Moms Across America, and this is why. It's because they put out this information knowing it's going to piss people off and it's going to scare people. And when you do that, you're worse than the parts per billion of these chemicals that are, and not chemicals, but metals that are naturally occurring. Because
Yeah.
in my mind, Moms Across America is 1,000 parts per billion BS in the news story. Okay.
I like it.
Sorry, that was my soapbox rant. Whew.
I mean, you're on that box, man. Just let you run. Sometimes you just got to. Like,
So tell us down below. Are you going to stop buying Girl Scout cookies because some fear mongering hack on Facebook only posted 20% of the information? And hey, do me a favor, go tell somebody else that it's okay to buy a Girl Scout cookie and that metals and any other chemicals that you see in your food, it's all dependent on dosage. So sorry to go on my rant. Have a wonderful day.